Hey tubers, so about 4 years ago I made a video where I counted down my top 10 favourite TV shows, and the list has changed quite a bit since then, and also probably most of the people that watch my videos now might not have seen it, so I'm going to remake that video for you right now. Number 10, Happy Days. Happy Days is one of the classic American sitcoms. I would love to say that it was a timeless show, and in many ways it is, because it's been off the air for about 30 years, and there are still a younger generation of people that have heard of it and have watched it and enjoyed it. But part of the problem of Happy Days is that it's quite dated. It's a sitcom from the 70s, but set in the 50s. And I guess part of the original appeal of Happy Days is that it was a nostalgia trip for people that were young in the 50s and 60s, but as the years have gone by, the 50s have become further and further away, I think it's become less and less relevant. But that doesn't mean that it's not still funny, because I have watched it and enjoyed it and laughed while watching it. And of course, if you're familiar with anything with Happy Days, it'll be one of the main characters called the Fonz, if you're ever wondering where my username came from. Number 9, Family Guy. I will just pre-warn you, a lot of my favourite shows are animated shows. Family Guy is a very, I don't want to say easygoing show, but that's kind of what I mean. There's nothing in Family Guy that you can really read into, and if there is, it's very hidden and probably not even worth reading into. It's just comedy from start to finish. It's the kind of thing where you can just sit back and just forget about the world for 20 minutes and just be entertained. And whether you find the jokes funny or not is entirely down to personal preference, but for me, Family Guy is the funniest thing I've ever seen on television. I think I've laughed more while watching Family Guy than any other TV show. Number 8, The 10th Kingdom. The 10th Kingdom was a miniseries from the 90s which aired on HBO originally, I think, but it aired on Sky One over here. It's just one of the most clever ways I've ever seen the fairy tale world reinvented for a modern day audience. It basically centres on the fairy tale world, but 200 years after all the events that we're familiar with in the fairy tale world have occurred, and Happily Ever After is kind of over. And a lot of it is kind of centred around these two people that come from 20th century New York City and end up in the fairy tale world by magical means, and most of it is kind of built around them trying to get back. But I think it's got the perfect balance between the magic world and the real world, possibly even more than Harry Potter if you can believe it. Number 7, Beavis and Butthead. I think Beavis and Butthead is one of the things that I feel like you get stupider just by watching it. But for a teenage boy with a lot of like-minded friends, there is this strange appeal, and it's also strangely and probably worryingly relatable. Number 6, Futurama. What Futurama have done is very, very smart. I don't know if you've ever really noticed this about Futurama, but what they appear to have done is they've basically taken everything that's wrong with the modern world and they've just pushed it forward 1,000 years. And I'm not saying Futurama's an accurate prediction of the future or anything like that, but what it's basically saying is, in 1,000 years' time, we will have probably progressed very, very far in terms of technology, but all the problems that are current will still be problems in 1,000 years. And as someone who is quite pessimistic, that appeals to me greatly. Number 5, South Park. I think South Park and Family Guy are two very, very different TV shows. I genuinely feel like South Park have taught me several important life lessons. Similar to Futurama, they really poke fun at the modern world to the extent of finding one thing and making a whole episode about it. Extremely exaggerated, obviously, but also strangely accurate. For example, the Scientology episode and the episode they did about racism and the episode about the Mormons and that kind of thing. They just have this really, really great way of perceiving and representing humanity and all its stupidity. Number 4, The Big Bang Theory. For me to like this show is quite an odd thing, because although it is considered to be one of the most popular sitcoms of today, there seems to be this consensus among video bloggers that it's not very good. I can think of at least 3 video bloggers that I watch that have badmouthed the show at some point, but you can't deny that the comedy is literally genius. It's probably the most original sitcom I've ever seen. It follows the normal structure of a sitcom, but based around an entirely different group of people. Not to mention the fact that it kind of promotes nerdism, and it does wonders for, like, the nerdfighter community. Number 3, a show about a dark, moody vampire with a dark past on a mission to find redemption and occasionally sings karaoke in a karaoke bar. Angel. Now, Angel was a spin-off from Buffy, and I think Most of the reasons that I like Buffy are the same reasons I like Angel, but being a spin-off, it's always going to come second best. But I think the show does have its merits, and it can stand on its own 2 feet rather than always standing in the shadow of its predecessor. It's got a great set of characters, both the original ones and the ones that have crossed over from the Buffy series, who develop greatly. I also feel like the difference in setting makes a huge difference in the overall tone of the show. Angel is set in LA, so it's set in the big city rather than small town Sunnydale, which for me, I get more of a like CSI vibe from Angel than I do anything else. And now, as you probably guessed, number 2, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Now remember what I said earlier about me liking The Big Bang Theory was a very odd thing for a video blogger. A video blogger that likes Buffy is so common that it's almost cliche. But please know that I love Buffy. It's just the best show. I said earlier with the 10th Kingdom that it was like the perfect balance between the magic world and the real world. I feel what Joss Whedon has done with this is he's taken the demon world and said, okay, let's take the demon world and make it so that that is the real world, but all the other variables are parallel to what the real world is actually like. To simplify, what I basically mean is Buffy is a girl that kills vampires, but she is also a person with feelings in the real world. It's just a great universe with great characters and great stories, and I'm pretty sure that's an expression of joy. And now for my number 1. Now, as much as I love and adore Buffy, and honestly I think objectively it's a better show than my number 1, but I have a certain loyalty to this TV show. I don't think there's anything that I've watched that I've enjoyed for as long as I have watched and enjoyed my number 1 TV show. I'm talking about The Simpsons now. Now everyone knows The Simpsons, and I feel like because it's The Simpsons is a justifiable and valid answer for why it's my number 1 TV show. Because the whole town of Springfield and the characters are just so lovable, and I feel like the Simpsons family are like a second family to me because I've grown up with them and I know them all so well, and I feel like it's a show that appeals to every single demographic in the world. So you've heard me talk about my favourite TV shows. I'd love to hear about some of yours. Are any of my favourite TV shows of yours? Are there any of my favourite TV shows that you really don't like? Let me know in the comments, and I will catch you next time.